Hi, Mark Gilbert here. In this video, I want to offer you some thoughts on how you might see humbleness as a spiritual practice. An alternate title for this video might be something along the lines of practicing taking another person's perspective. So at the outset, maybe let's talk about what is a spiritual practice. In my mind, and for the purposes of this video, a brief thought is that a spiritual practice is really anything that you can do in this human realm that reminds you that you are more than this human, more than this individual that you call yourself to be. Anything that connects you to a transcendent aspect of life can be a spiritual practice. We often talk about meditation, walking in nature, and things like that are spiritual practices because they tend to take you out of the sense of you being an individual separate and apart from the world and allowing yourself to see there's a part of you that transcends your physical nature. Humbleness can do that as well. But what is humbleness? Well, there's lots of ways we could define it, but again, for the purposes of this short video, I want you to consider that humbleness is really whenever you start seeing yourself as better than another person, to step back and realize that you're not. So if you think that you're smarter, more intelligent, more beautiful, have greater skills, abilities, whatever it is that in your mind and your egoic sense tends to divide you from other people by the very nature that you're putting yourself above other people, to stop that and find ways in which you can find an aspect that connects you to other people, that allows you to approach life with a degree of recognizing that you don't have all the answers and you're not the greatest thing since sliced bread. So, you can look out at life these days and see that there's a lot of people who certainly aren't very humble. In fact, we have a lot of people who have worked themselves into a position where they see themselves as right and so many other people wrong. In fact, we don't have to go very far in looking out at the world and seeing through the political divisiveness and the culture wars and things of that nature, that there is a whole aspect of humanity that's taken on this belief that I'm right and you're wrong, that I have the answers and that you don't, and that you don't have the great wisdom that I have, and that we set ourselves apart and create this divisiveness between other people. In fact, we often take it to another level where we feel like we're in competition with these others. So we look at other people who believe differently than us, and we want to impose our beliefs on them. We want to change their way of thinking, if possible, but if nothing else, just to show them, and with some sort of outlay of words or comments on social media or whatever it might be, that I am right and you are wrong. And in doing that, we put ourselves again above other people. These things tend to divide us, and what we want is to seek something that unites us. And so developing a degree of humbleness is an important aspect of your spiritual practices to bring you into a greater sense of connection with the fellow human beings. I was reading an article in the paper today about someone who was pointing out that in spite of all of the political divisiveness, that we are very much aligned in so many aspects of political choices, that we believe so much alike on so many things, but that we tend to focus our attention on these things where we believe differently, and to say we're so apart and so divided on these issues. And the point of the article is that if you drill down beyond our surface differences, you will find we have so much in common politically. I truly believe this. It's a point I made in a book that I wrote many years ago called Be Yourself, Evolving the World Through Personal Empowerment. And one of the things I pointed out in that book, and had a whole chapter devoted to it, was the ways in which we are alike. It's not so much just our political beliefs, but if we drill down to the very nature that we are these all having, you have human bodies and are having these human experiences, yet we have something within us that calls us to transcend this human aspect of ourselves. Those are commonalities. But at the human level, we can look at the need for food, water, safety, security, shelter, community. So many things, and so many things we're motivated by are the same as other people. And if we focus on that, it tends to take us away from focusing on our differences. So the key thing, as this spiritual practice develops for you, is to recognize that you're looking for the commonalities in other people. You're looking for ways that you are alike and that you are connected to people. And as we often say, what we tend to focus on is what we grow in our lives. So if we look at other people with an eye towards we're alike, we're going to grow more alikeness. If we look at the ways in which we're different, we're going to tend to focus on that and grow more of that expression in the material world as well. The fact is, we all develop certain blind spots as to our beliefs that we don't see where they're limited. We tend to have moved through experiences in life and understandings, and we've gained wisdom, and we accept a certain pattern of beliefs that say, this is the truth as I believe it. And we become so attached to that that we can't often see the blind spots where there's aspects of our own belief structure that are limiting us. A couple of quick examples of that is that oftentimes I will see, people of a very devout religious nature, Christian ministers and things of that nature, who have accepted a belief that the Bible, is the inherent Word of God and that everything in it is literally true. And so in any discussions with them, they're going to point back to the Bible as being their truth from which they hang everything on. As long as their belief is stuck at seeing that, then they are limiting themselves. That becomes their blind spot for them. Because what happens is other people may take a perspective that the Bible has great and wonderful truths in it, but it's not infallible, that it's something that we can take as a tool that's been used by humanity for many years to develop and grow them and to have them gain a higher degree of working together and have answers to the bigger questions on the meaning of life from that book. But someone who sees that book as the total truth is blind to the fact that other people turn to look beyond that book and see truths elsewhere. So that's a blind spot that I often run into with people who point to the Bible as literal truth and bring that as the closing aspect of all their arguments. Similarly, I interact with a lot of people and see, people on TV who tend to bring all of their arguments back to what does science say, quote unquote? What are the rational material truths that we can look at? Logic and reasons and scientific findings are the only way to find truth. And if people believe that, and they tend to take it to the nth degree of saying from that we can only accept that the world is physical stuff, physical matter, that becomes such an underlying belief for them that they can't see another belief. Just like the person who hangs all of their truths based on the Bible or their religious beliefs, a scientist or materialist who has taken it to the nth degree with materialism and says everything is physical matter, has a blind spot over the nature of the fact that, one blind spot is what does science point to when science has been usurped by money or political power, when sometimes the truths that are trying to be determined through scientific methods are taken over by those who have an ulterior motive for the outcomes of the scientific study. That's not true science, but sometimes we have to take a step back and look at the reported findings by science to see, is there something that is tainting their truth? The other bigger thing that I often see is that many people who believe that only physical matter is real deny the fact that there may be a realm or aspects of life that transcend this physical human nature. Like I often say in these videos, I've come to believe that we're spiritual beings who are having a human experience, that we're going through this experience to develop learning and growth and wisdom and to see our ultimate unity. But being a spiritual being means that there is something in us that transcends the physical realm. So many people who hang their hats on all truth being science and rational and reasoning and that type of thought don't see the blind spots when there may be something that transcends reason and ration and the scientific method, something that transcends the physical realm for intuitive or spiritual truths. Just like these other people, though, I've got to be open to the fact of looking at where's my blind spot. As I put out these videos and I do my writings and my books, I often have to stop and think, am I right about this? If anybody who's taken any classes from me, you will know that I often make the statement in those classes that after answering a question, but I could be wrong. Because I recognize that there is a vast complexity to this universe in which we live, and no one person holds all the truth. that there are aspects of truth that transcend the Bible and religious beliefs. There's aspects of truth that transcend materialism and scientific truths and rational thought. And just like I'm a proponent of new thought and the very nature that there is a transcendent nature to us, and that we live in as a spiritual being, having this human experience and all that goes with that, everything that I have come to believe about that, I have to be open to the fact that there is something more. There is something I don't understand. And I can recognize that if I look back over the pattern of my life and know that what I believed many years ago, I believe so much differently than I do now, that I have become into so much more wisdom, and that I've been able to transcend my old beliefs and bring in new beliefs as new wisdom comes to me. But that also raises the question, where will I be in 20 years from now or 5 years from now? Are there new wisdoms and new learnings that are waiting to be birthed? And I mean being birthed beyond just scientific and technological findings. Yes, we're continuously finding new discoveries in the world of form with physical technology and things of that nature. But we're also continuing to develop and grow and evolve spiritually. And I've got to be open to the fact that no matter how much I believe I'm right in this moment, I have to be open to a humbleness that there's more to life and more that I don't yet understand. So having said all that, I want to give you 3 guiding principles that I think that you can employ in developing a spiritual practice of humbleness. The first one is to recognize that as you look out at other people in the world who believe differently from you, to say to yourself, if I had lived that person's life, I would probably believe like they do. It's real easy to see somebody that believes differently from you and to judge them as being wrong or limited in their beliefs or limited in their thinking. But if we can step back and say, if I had lived their life, I would probably believe like they do, it brings us to a sense of connection and to a sense of humbleness. As so many people like to say, we people, when we're having this experience, are born onto the planet at square one. It's like we're on a big game board, but we all come onto the earth at the first square. Now, there are things that impact us. And there are things that impact us and may impact us before we even come onto this physical planet being birthed as a child. These could be genetic tendencies and things of that nature, physical aspects of our being that are hardwired into this physical nature, like certain physical characteristics and such, that are going to shape who we become as a human being. But there may be other things as well. Many people like to talk about the fact that we are spiritual beings coming back routinely to this human experience. Hence, there's a process of reincarnation. And sometimes many of our lives may be predetermined to a degree or shaped by prior lives that existed in our past before this particular incarnation. If you happen to believe that is true, then you can also say that not only is DNA and genetics some predisposition as we're born onto Earth, but there's also aspects like past lives and other tendencies that are carried with us into this particular body. But whether you accept any or all of that at all, you can also acknowledge that as we're born onto the planet and we move through a series of experiences, that we're each born into different families with different beliefs. We could be born into different cultures and different countries. We are moving through different experiences that teach us different things. It's, one of the things we like to say is that people come into the planet and we're infected by either nature or nurture, nature being the sort of predisposition stuff a moment ago, or nurture, the effects of what happens to us while we're in this lifetime. But nurture can give us positive things and it can give us negative things. It can give us messages of hope and a sense that we are loved and cared for and have all of our basic needs met and a great social safety net through our family and our friends. Or we can be born into degrees of trauma of people who've been wounded as parents and they're now parents and they're parenting us. and parenting certain people and they're developing negative messages in their awareness and treating them poorly. You know, we often talk about these days that many people have developed and gone through some sense of trauma early on in their life. And I tend to believe that that's true, that through the physical experiences and material experiences we've had in this lifetime, there's been things that have served us and there's been things that have harmed us. And part of the growth process is to look beyond the harming and to grow through it, to learn the lessons that we can from it, and to move beyond the traumas of our life to gain the wisdom that we need to in this particular lifetime. But what I want you to focus on in this particular moment is that we look out at other people and we judge them as differently, and we stop and say, if I live their life, I might believe like they do. We have to look at them and say, they have walked a path that is different from us. Our path has led us into the beliefs that we currently hold, and we hold up as being better, greater than other people, that we've got the wisdom and the truth. But other people have walked a different path, and if we had truly lived their life and had the experiences they had, we have to be open to the fact and the strong possibility that we would probably believe exactly like they do. This is not to say we don't have free will to make different choices, but the very fact that the very scenario that they've moved through, both with pre-existing stuff that they brought to the planet and the experiences that they've had since being on the planet, have led them to a belief structure that has served them and has been guided and gently moved along by that path. If we can do that, then it opens us to the fact of seeing that we have each person on this planet having an own unique pathway to who they are in this moment and the beliefs that they hold. And if we recognize that if we had had their pathway, that we might very well be believing similar to what they're touting, it allows us to be open to the concept that maybe we're more alike than we want to accept. It opens us to a degree of humbleness. The second suggestion I want to give you, and it sort of builds on the first, is a recognition that we live in a complex universe, and how much ever we have grown and developed in our wisdom and understanding of this universe, there is always still a greater aspect to this universe that transcends our knowledge and what we've come to accept and believe. And so that should open us to a humbleness. As I mentioned a minute ago, oftentimes in my classes when people ask me something, I'll give what I think is true, but I say, but I could be wrong, because I am open to the fact that there is more to this life that I've come to understand. Yes, I can look back and say I've grown with all this wisdom and come to accept this as true, but now I have to not turn that into something that's stuck in concrete that doesn't allow me to grow and evolve beyond it. And so by opening myself to recognizing I could be wrong, and that's the second tip I want you to leave you with, is to always be humble to the fact that no matter what you believe in this moment, your belief could very well be wrong or limited in some capacity by the very vast complexity of this universe and things that you've yet to experience and to understand about it. And the third suggestion that I want to give to you today in employing humbleness as a spiritual practice is to ask yourself this question: what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in one where we are constantly at odds with one another, seeing ourselves as better than or less than, and building up walls of divisiveness? Or do we want to build a world of love and compassion? By developing the skills of being humble, by not putting yourself above others, by recognizing that the beliefs of others have honestly become birthed through their unique experiences and that ours have been birthed through ours, by allowing ourselves to be open to the possibilities that we're wrong, it builds this degree of humbleness in our lives that we want to then recognize and see, how can we bring people together in a sense of unity and loveness? What kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in one where we divide ourselves, or do you want to be in a world where we care about each other and we're open to supporting one another and allowing ourselves the free will to believe what we want and to grow to the highest potential of who we can be? So I hope this video has been beneficial. I hope that you will consider how you might build humbleness into your spiritual practices and help create a world that works for all. Thanks for listening.